I never had any anticipation of being, I guess, an artist. Just sitting there laying beads of weld was very exciting to have something that actually looked good for the first time. And so I think this kind of combination of working outdoors, being conservation minded, but yet having mechanical skills and wanting to work on old vehicles, all kind of came together. And then years later, came out in what I'm doing now. And wildlife is my main subject matter. I think I kind of fell into this business side of it backwards. Social media kicked off really big, and I started getting enough sales to run the business off that.
So where do you find your material?
I get that question a lot.
From industry-leading tube lasers and benders to high-performance sheet lasers and press brake systems, BLM Group delivers more than machines. Automation, software, and application expertise come together to create fully integrated production solutions, backed by training, service, and support to keep your operation running at its best. Smarter software, seamless connectivity, systems designed to work together and streamline production at every stage. One partner, more possibilities. BLM Group. And now, back to the episode.
Welcome to the Fabricator Podcast. My name is Dan Davis with the Fabricator.
I'm Lincoln Bruner with the Fabricator and the Tube and Pipe Journal, and today we're talking with David Groenjes from the Green Bay, Wisconsin area. Wonderful metal artist. It was just a lot of fun to talk to.
A very talented person as well. He's got a good story about how he became a metal artist, and it's not necessarily the path most of our guests have taken.
No, he went to be a kind of a outdoor conservationist at UW River Falls and decided along the way to get into auto mechanics. And then from there, he made his way into art because of one thing he saw. He started just tinkering around with this caribou head at his house, right?
Skull, in fact.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, not skull. It was antlers.
Yeah.
Yeah, my bad. Sorry.
Yeah.
But from there, he's created his own pretty successful business, and we talk a little bit about that. And I think that'll be interesting as well.
Yeah.
So this one goes a little bit longer, so we'll get right to it. Enjoy this episode, and be sure and let us know what you think.
FabTech is North America's largest event for metal forming, fabricating, welding, and finishing, and it's coming to Las Vegas October 21st to the 23rd. Register for free at fabtechexpo.com. And now, back to the episode.
For our guest, David, can you give us a little bit of an idea of who you are and what you're doing and how you got to this point?
Well, yeah. So, I've always been kind of an outdoors person, and I never had any anticipation of being, I guess, an artist when I grew up. Went to college to get a degree in natural resource conservation because it just sounded like something you could get a four-year degree in, and I liked being outdoors.
Yeah.
But I was always working on cars, trucks, things growing up. That was a lot of fun for me. And so I think this kind of combination of working outdoors, being conservation minded, but yet having mechanical skills and wanting to work on old vehicles, all kind of came together. And then years later, it came out in what I'm doing now.
Right.
There was a lot of things that led up to that, but right out of college, I needed a job. So I started working as a mechanic, and then that led to managing an auto repair shop and then managing a few more. And I did that for 13 years.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of the kind of business sense of things, and that came from those years of experience. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed what I did. But in the meantime, I had kind of developed this idea to just make stuff out of metal. I have a lot of my extended family was really artistic. And I have an uncle that made some really cool metal work that kind of inspired me back when I was in high school, college. Cool. And it was kind of that idea. I had this I had this set of antlers from a caribou out of Alaska sitting in my basement. I had no way to hang them, display them. And I'm like, I'm gonna make a head out of rebar to mount these antlers to.
Huh.
And I'll just display it in my garage or whatever, And that was the first thing I really made that kind of, I got done and I'm like, I bet someone would pay money for that someday. You never know. And
Sure.
got me thinking about metal art as maybe an income source.
How old were you when this occurred?
That was 2014.
Okay.
So,
All right.
I was just working out of a little 2-car garage behind our house, and I had like a flux core welder and an old grinder with a taped together cord, and that was it. And we moved to a new house. I got a new shop. And it took a couple of years. I kind of took a break from it because the shop wasn't finished. I didn't even have electricity in it yet. And then I was a few years later, probably around 2018, my grandmother had passed away, and my parents were like, you need a new welder. I'd like you to take some money from, grandma's estate and buy a nice welder.
Yeah.
So I got a new welder, and like welding became a lot more fun.
Oh, wow.
With a real MIG welder with gas and everything. And that's when I kind of got back into it and started making things. And I'm like, how do you sell art? I don't know how to sell art. So Etsy, right? And so I threw a couple of things on Etsy, and like people started buying it, and it just kind of took off from there.
And you're thinking back to college and, your strong interest in conservation and the outdoors. How do you think that sort of being inundated with the outdoors played into where you are now?
I think it had a big role. I had a couple of professors that were really, really big into like the sustainability aspect of conservation, whether it be building or housing developments or all kinds of different things, conservation, And at the time, I wanted to work in nature, outdoors, but I didn't want to go and get a master's degree or to be like a biologist or something like that. 4 years of additional schooling was enough. I didn't want to go back for more. So at the time, I thought I'd be in like the law enforcement side of it because that would get me outside, out with nature every day, kind of enforcing the, natural resource laws.
Yeah.
And after we had a few kids, I didn't want to pursue the law enforcement side anymore. It was just, weekends, nights, and all that stuff away from the family.
Sure.
But I think that really kind of set the stage for thinking about using recycled materials. And like basically everything I use in my work is either recycled or repurposed. I don't really use any new material. The school I went to was a big school of the arts. I didn't have any idea that I would be in arts. I took the basic art curriculum courses you needed when I was in college and kind of just didn't even think about it.
Cool. Or did you think at any time back then that maybe you would end up doing something like on the creative side?
No, not at all. I mean, I had fun building like off-road Jeeps and trucks and stuff like that. So I thought, well, maybe someday I'd have a shop that, brought in trucks or old cars and did, fabrication work or something like that. But that was my creative outlet at the time, is doing things like that. But actual artistic work, it was never really a thought that I would ever be doing something like that.
Wow.
Thinking back to that, putting that caribou head together, I mean, what kind of tripped the trigger, so to speak, in you to maybe pursue the second piece and the third piece? I mean, what was it about that project that lit something in you?
So as I was working through it, I mean, the things this was only 10, 11 years ago, but the information on the internet, like social media, wasn't really that big yet as far as like Instagram or Pinterest.
Right.
And, so you couldn't find the images that you can find now. And so there wasn't really, I didn't know of anybody that did work like that. Other, my uncle, I said, had done some work, but I didn't know of anyone else. And so I just I got that piece done. I'm like, I wonder if people do this kind of work and like, can they sell it? And I started looking online, and I found an artist, John Lopez, out of South Dakota. And he was like the first person I had ever seen that did scrap metal art that was something that I thought really looked realistic and clean and refined. And at that point I was like, I want to do that someday. And I want to do it full time. Like, I don't want it to be just a hobby. Like, I want to be that guy that gets to just make art all day and sell it. And that was like 11 or 12 years ago when I kind of realized that's, what I wanted to do.
Yeah. So we featured John. We were talking a little bit before we started recording, in a article back in 2020.
April 2020. Yeah.
Yeah. And Did you reach out to him directly, or did you communicate with him at all?
No, I never did. I mean, when we were in the early years, I would maybe comment on something on Instagram or something.
Right.
But then it was in 2019. I was still working full time, managing these shops, feeling pretty good about my career in the auto world. And I had developed a little bit of a following on Instagram, and I got an invitation to a show, international show over in Doha, Qatar.
Really?
Wow.
And I'm like, this doesn't sound legitimate,
There's a Nigerian prince who wants you to come to Doha.
And so I'm like, yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And it was like 6 months later, here this feed is popping up. John Lopez is in Qatar. Alan Williams, a guy I follow out of the UK, is in Qatar. Like, all these metal artists that I know are at this giant show in Qatar. I'm like, man, that was the real deal.
Oops.
And so it was 4 years later, I got an invitation to do the show. And I'm like, this is actually the real thing. So I actually reached out to John at that point, asked him a little bit about his experience. He's like, yeah, if you have the opportunity to go, you should go. And I talked to a couple of the other artists. So then it got delayed a little bit, but February of 25, I went to Doha, and we did this exhibition for like 2.5 weeks.
Oh,
Very,
wow.
And they shipped all of our work over there, and
No kidding. Wow.
eventually it got shipped.
Of all places.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was it kind of centered on the recycled aspect of the artwork?
Yeah. So the show was called Tadweer, which in the language over there, it means recycled. So
Oh, okay, yeah.
the first time they had done the show, it was only metal artists. This time it was heavily focused on metal. They also had a separate exhibition area for people that used recycled paper, and another one for people that used recycled wood.
Right.
And they brought, it was, I think, 30 or 35 artists from just all around the world, and set up this huge temporary exhibition. And then, after big circus tent type things. And it was pretty.
Do you burn it all at the end?
No, it didn't get burned.
Okay. I love this question because, I think most metal artists probably feel more a kinship with metal workers as opposed to artists. So what was it like actually being amongst like artists, not just people who work with metal, but all sorts of materials?
That's an interesting question. So, yeah, I mean, I don't consider myself a welder by any standards, because I'm probably far from it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us there would have agreed, because a lot of the people I met, they had wanted an artistic outlet, and they found these ways, whether it was working with wood or working with steel or other recycled materials, and that became their outlet. And, the welding is just, it's the way to stick the material together, right?
Yeah.
And probably the processes we're using on things aren't necessarily I don't know what type of rod I'm supposed to use for this or that, but it sticks together and it holds. That's all that really matters.
All right, this might be the problem of the host, because I assume wearing camo, you would just automatically feel more connected to the metalworking. So
We're cursed with knowledge here.
I'd probably pose that question to somebody wearing a beret the other way. Did you find inspiration when you went over there from like rubbing elbows with all these people?
Yeah, big time. I mean, there were some artists that I looked up to since I knew metal art was a thing, and I got to meet them. And a lot of them I still communicate with, frequently. Seeing their work in person was a whole new thing. Because, I mean, sculpture, things that are 3D, you can see it on a TV screen, but actually seeing it in person, getting to walk around it, see the scale of it, and see the fine details that you miss, it was a totally different experience. And so, I mean, I went home with a lot of newfound, inspiration, a little bit of frustration. We don't really know what happened, but there was a customs error, I guess, in the way our work was classified. So the previous show, everyone's work had been for sale, and they sold out.
Mm-hmm.
It was all for sale this time, and everyone had people that wanted to buy their work, but it got classified in customs wrong. So
what did it get classified as?
It was classified for a temporary exhibition, and it had to be shipped back to the source location after a predetermined amount of time.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man.
So the only way they would have been able to legally sell any of the work is it would have had to get shipped back to its origination and then shipped back. And of course, no one wanted to deal with that. So meanwhile, like everyone, they've maybe worked for months or years on this body of work for this show, hoping like it might be the payday to pay for last year.
Right.
And now they got to ship it all back home. And then like it took months to return with a lot of uncertainty, but it all returned home. Everyone's stuff returned home back safe. But it was like, you went into the show with this big high and you're thinking maybe, we'll, pay for some of our time. And then you go back home with a bunch of uncertainty of like, okay, we gotta pay the bills, and like the work isn't home yet, and we don't know when it's going to get home. So, I mean, overall it was a really fantastic experience, but I know there was some little bit of uncertainty for a lot of the artists there because of the way things happened. But
do they do the show every year?
No, they had done the show in 2019 and they did it again in 24. And, aside from that, I don't really know
Gotcha. Okay.
if it will happen again.
Looking to take some time off.
Well, we just featured another artist, Cindy Chin.
Yeah.
We did an article on her a couple of years ago that
she'd been there.
Apparently,
as
she was part of that as well.
Yeah, we were there
wow.
together.
Gotcha,
Yeah,
okay.
we caught the plane in Chicago together and flew there together. So
Wow.
You talked about details in the work that you're noticing in the other artists there. I was just looking over some of your Instagram stuff, David. I was really taken by especially the raptors you've done, the owl and the eagle.
Yeah.
The talons. I know might be a strange thing to bring up, but like that's very detailed work that looks just very, very finely done.
Yeah.
And I thought, man, how do you teach yourself to do work that finely tuned, just kind of not having done it all your life?
It's a lot of, I look at a lot of photographs.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of scaling of my photographs to kind of get the proportions right. And I've found that, take measurements again, but then of course your eye is always going to tell you if something is off a little bit. I like to do a lot of drawing as a kid, primarily like wildlife things. So I think I might have honed a little bit of that sketching and things when I was younger.
Cool.
But the main thing is like really focusing on kind of like little movements or things. So like an animal doesn't look like a statue.
Right.
Like it looks like it's a little bit more alive. And I also try to focus on, I don't do a lot of things that are in the action of like running or leaping. Because I think when you're going to see a sculpture, if a dog was in front of you and it jumped, you don't see the dog in midair like frozen.
Right.
Like you see the motion, and of course the sculpture can't move. So I try to pick postures that look like, if something is looking at something or if something is maybe thinking, and it gives you that idea that it could be alive not in motion at the moment.
Right. It conveys a real life presence.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just like, I just looked at that owl that you did. I don't know how long ago you had sculpted that.
I did a few owls recently.
And I don't know. Yeah. So, but the point being, I noticed just that there seems to be in your work, strong attention to certain things, feathers, the wings, things like that look, it looks very realistic. Is it just something that you've honed over the past few years to get that? And would you consider yourself a perfectionist in that way?
I think I'm becoming more of a perfectionist. I think I'm getting more to the point of understanding when things are not good enough and maybe being willing to take it back apart and start over.
Oh, wow.
There's times where in the past, maybe I thought it was okay and I would just kind of
call it good.
I don't like to do that anymore. I really want it to be, perfect. And I like to use materials that the material hints at a texture or a shape without being too literal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't form a feather and like make little veins in the feather, or I don't form fur. Like if I want to illustrate fur, I might use a sprocket that has a really coarse texture. It really looks nothing like fur, but your mind kind of fills in the gaps and tells you like, oh, that's a coarse texture that kind of looks like fur or feathers, or
it connotes the idea.
Yeah. And then, things like the eyes or the beak or the talons, I'll do a little bit more work on those to make them look more highly detailed.
So where do you find your material?
I get that question a lot. I get it everywhere. So, it used to be when I was working in auto repair, the owner of the business I worked would let me kind of have free reign of the scrap bin. So on a weekly basis, I'd be picking through things that looked like things I might use. And I still get to go back there and kind of dig through their scrap. There's we've got a big fabrication shop right in the little town of Freedom I live in, and they've been gracious enough to let me dig through their, leftover materials on a frequent basis. So I get all kinds of, it's new steel, but it's like a piece that went through a shear and it's the cutoff end and it's kind of twisted up and got sharp edges, but it's no good for them. So it's in the scrap. And so I'll buy that stuff from them. I get a lot of stuff off like Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
The Goodwill. I used to go to the Goodwill and like scavenge their silverware bins.
Oh, wow.
We've got a lot of farms around us, and sometimes you'll just get lucky. You'll see a farmer with like a tractor for sale, and you go talk to him, and he's got a big scrapyard full of metal in the back and willing to let you dig through it.
So are you creating your own scrapyard?
I am.
How big is that so far?
I mean, it probably, it's kind of gotten a little bit out of control in the last year because I've been moving some things around, but I probably got like a half acre of metal, sitting around.
No kidding. Will you bring in like an old truck or something like
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I had an old friend of mine. He says, "Hey, I got this plow off of a Jeep and you can have it for $200." And I was like, "I don't really need a plow." But he's like, "But you got to take the Jeep with it." I was like, "Well, that might be worth it." He says it doesn't run. So we got it home and like there was more rust than metal on this Jeep, and we found out it did run. So we got to teach the kids to drive this thing around the field. And
nice.
But now it's sitting there waiting to get taken apart, and used for parts.
Sure.
And then indoors is more of my like refined clean scrap. Like I'll take a lot of engines and transmissions apart.
Yeah.
Things like typewriters and sewing machines, a lot of fine, delicate pieces. Those all stay indoors where they're not getting
rusted up,
wet and rusty, and stuff like that.
Do you approach projects differently based on where they might be? Do you have did you approach an outdoor sculpture differently than maybe something that probably is going to find a home or in somebody's home?
Yes. So the outdoor work usually has a completely different look to it than what I do for indoors. So outdoor work, I don't like to use any type of a finish on it.
Okay.
The way that I make my work has so much, like, there's things behind things. And like, even if I could find someone to sandblast it all clean of rust, I don't know how I would ever get a finish that could be applied where it wouldn't start rusting from the inside out.
Right.
And then you just have rust bubbling under paint or clear coat, and it's going to get worse. So outdoor work is usually just raw steel, maybe some chrome or stainless, and it's more conceptual, whereas it doesn't have as much of the fine detail, because if you're looking at a piece outdoors, you're probably viewing it from 10 or 20 feet away. Indoor work, you're up close and personal with it. And I like to, in the indoor stuff, I'll try to find metal that has remaining bits of paint on it, things like that, because that'll stay for an indoor environment looking nice for a long time.
What have you found to be the more popular pieces of late that you've made in terms of like a general theme? Or
I would say birds.
Birds?
Yeah, birds are pretty popular all around. I like to make all kinds of different things, and then at the end of the month or the end of the year, and I look back, it's like I made a lot of birds, and I don't realize I made so many birds. But I just reptiles are really fun for me. It's kind of a little bit more of a niche market for a reptile.
The one with the spring-loaded tail. I saw.
That was a lot of fun. Yeah. That was a lot of work. I don't know how soon I'll do another one of those, but. Being able to like replicate like the texture and the folds in the skin that a reptile has. There's so many neat like pieces of perforated metal or expanded sheet metal or like chains and links that have all kinds of fine detail that work really good for reptiles.
Cool.
So I'll probably do some more of those in the near future, but birds have been pretty popular all around the board.
That's cool.
Well, you mentioned earlier the ability for you to get a modern like welding power source, and how that kind of pulled you back in. Can you kind of talk about the difference between working with what you had and then working with newer technology?
Yeah. I don't even know what brand it was, but it was just a flux core welder that I had bought to work on like old rusty trucks when I was younger. And there was so much of the slag from the flux core left behind, and I just don't think it had enough power to really burn into, I could crank it way up and turn the wire speed down, and I just couldn't get a good looking bead to like make something structural. And then, I got my first machine, and it was like a dual voltage 110, 220 machine. And I was like, wow, I made my welding table was the first thing I made with it, because I needed a place to weld. And I was like, this looks like someone that knows what they're doing is actually
look at that,
made these welds, and it was really like just sitting there laying beads of weld was very exciting to have something that actually looked good for the first time.
Right.
And,
cool.
It was a multi-process machine. I could TIG with it, and I'm still not very good at that. But I have the ability to if I want.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to stick weld for, if I'm working outdoors and it's windy or something, I haven't utilized that, but I've got this new outdoor kind of sculpture workshop area that I'm working on if I want to do something really, really big someday.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'll find myself stick welding. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
what's it like working with different materials? Let me ask that. Do you work with different materials, trying to like join things that if somebody was designing a product, there's no way they would ever
said
do
they'd
that?
never do that. Yeah. I mean, I weld a lot of stainless and steel together, and that's pretty simple. Where I run into problems is with like cast. I know there's special processes and special like rod and preheating and things that should be done for cast, and I probably don't do any of that right.
Mm-hmm.
But it usually, as long as I can make a way to keep it from fracturing, the biggest thing is like big sculptures. They're fine sitting still, but when you transport it 100 or 1,000 miles and it's on the trailer just bouncing the whole time,
Right.
that's where I've found like that's where the weak point will be. And I've been pretty lucky to not have any major issues with that. But that's what I worry about
And
the
that's
most.
that's just something I would never think of. But
That constant like vibration going down the road.
You've got to develop your own testing chamber before you deliver some of this stuff.
I do usually throw it on the trailer and drive around town for like a day with it, just to test it and bring it back.
You got your own simulation trailer?
No.
This is a simulated
See?
10,000 miles.
Fabricator Podcast, getting to the in-depth world of metal art.
Not like that.
Not like,
But and I've learned to kind of like have like little cheat methods. Like for example, if it's a piece of cast, maybe there's like a threaded bolt hole in it, and I can thread a mild steel bolt into that hole, and I can maybe run a little weld onto that too. So I know that, hey, if my cast weld fractures,
Yeah.
I've still got a backup. Like spring steel is pretty tough. I use a lot of leaf springs. They weld really nice, but like just the littlest like vibration, sometimes I think it creates like a harmonics within the steel or something. I'm not technical on this here, but and it'll just boom fracture right on that weld, and it'll fracture right through the middle of it.
We'll get a comment hopefully about
someone who I don't know
knows
what causes it, but I know it's because it's the spring steel, high tensile steel
Right.
or whatever.
Do you have to clean a lot of stuff before you work with it?
Yeah, everything will get ground down where I'm welding, but I'll try not to grind any more than I need to, because I like the look of the rust or the
Right.
paint or whatever on my thing, and I don't want to see a bunch of like big ground areas, because then now it's going to take a long time for it to get that finish that it originally had. And of course, sometimes I don't grind enough, and then you run into the porosity and the impurities, and you got to kind of grind it out and do it over again.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd rather do that and retain the look of the metal that I'm going for.
Well, living in Northeast Wisconsin, you have plenty of chances for rust.
A lot.
Yeah. Have you found working with certain kinds of metal, certain types of metals more pleasurable than others? You find a kind of like carbon versus stainless, for instance, or anything like that?
I definitely like carbon steel better. And it seems like newer steel. And when I say newer, like I've got a lot of old agricultural equipment that's probably like 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
And even when you grind off the layers of rust, there's something that seems a little different about that steel. That it seems like it might have impurities within the steel or something, because you get a lot of popping or like little bubbles coming up when you're done welding that I don't get with newer, fresher steel.
Okay. Definitely could be, the mills had different standards, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Internal engine parts are another one that surprised the heck out of me. So things like camshafts, crankshafts, connecting rods, metal is porous and they absorb motor oil.
Oh,
so you can go wash it in the parts washer all day long, and you go to run your first bead and it just blows up on you and oil starts pouring out. And so you got to take those pieces to put them in a fire, take a torch to them.
Really?
And the oil starts just running out, dripping.
Out of the metal.
Out of the metal.
No kidding.
Yeah. And so once you get the oil all burned out, you can run a nice bead on it, but before then you'll never have a weld that is usable.
That's fascinating. I've never heard anybody talk about that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Probably an odd thing to weld on, you know?
Well, no, you're doing reclaimed metal. I mean, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
So when did you decide you could do this full time? Like, what was the impetus to kind of walk away from the day gig?
It was probably a really more drawn out than it should have been process of probably over the course of like 2 years. So it was probably around 2019. You know, I let the owner of the business know kind of how I felt, that like, I kind of, you know, I wanted to stay in auto repair, but like I had this thing I was doing that I thought might come of something someday. And he was, you know, gracious enough to understand that and kind of work with me through that process. But I had started making goals for myself, and basically I'd set a goal, like I want to work this many hours a week. You know, at the time I have 3 kids. They're in middle school, high school now, but they were young. So they'd go to bed at like 7, and my time to work in the shop was after they went to bed. So I'd put the kids to bed. I'd go work in the shop for a couple hours every night, and I'd make a goal of like, say like, hey, I want to make enough metal art this month that I can cover my truck payment, you know, and like, if I achieve that, I'd say, okay, well, what does it take to get to the next level? And so I kind of gotten to a point where I knew how many hours I was putting in a week, and I knew kind of what I was making a week or a month in sales on average. And I said, well, if I'm putting 10 hours a week in, what if I put 50 hours a week in? Is it safe to assume that I'll sell 5 times as much? Like, I didn't have any inventory. Everything usually sold in within a couple months. So it's like, I think it's a fairly safe assumption that I'm probably going to increase sales commensurate with increase in production.
That's optimistic.
It was an optimistic assumption, but it worked.
Wow.
And it's kind of been
Cool.
the way it's gone since then, you know, like there's lulls, there's highs.
It's like any business almost.
There's been times where social media worked really, really good for me, and like all my sales were based off social media. There's been months or even almost a whole year where like I didn't make any sales off of social media, and I relied on art galleries. And so that was kind of the next thing. Like, okay, if I'm going to do this full time, I at least need to be in one art gallery. I probably need to have at least a couple bigger commissions scheduled before I, put my notice in. And so I put a couple month notice in where I was working and helped them transition over to having someone else take over my position. And then, I remember that day, like that last day, and they kind of threw like a going away party for me. And like next day, like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now what?
Yeah. How's that gone? Like you mentioned your kids, like, and I'm always wondering, what's their interest level in what you're doing, if any, and how are you going about kind of integrating them into what you got going on?
Yeah, they all have a little bit different interest in different areas, and they've all been pretty helpful. I mean, they all, work for me, quote unquote, throughout the year, doing different jobs for the business.
Nice.
Some of it's photography, some of it's helping me, move pieces around. A lot of these old pieces of like farm equipment need to be disassembled. And my boys specifically like to take that stuff apart. My daughter loves to organize.
Yeah.
Cool.
So like I'll, go to a swap meet or like somewhere and come home with like boxes of bolts and nuts and wrenches, and she takes that and, finds spots where it should go in the shop.
Yeah.
So they've all got a little bit different interest in it. I don't know if like artwork is like directly in any one of their futures, like that they see it at this point, but my older son is hoping to be a welder.
Yeah.
And so he's kind of been coming out and helping me. He did a lot of help this last year with me on projects. He'd come out there and I'd say, hey, I need this cut this size, and he'd cut pieces and clean them up, and he'd get them tacked in place for me. And that was super helpful.
That's cool.
My youngest one, he likes to take a lot of things apart for me and help catalog those parts. And then my daughter kind of fills in between. So
That's cool.
Yeah. How much of the time is of your like 50-hour work week, if that's what you're still doing, is occupied with finding materials?
probably half of it.
No kidding. Wow.
Half.
I would say, it was funny.
I imagine it can consume a lot of parts. Some of these larger pieces.
Someone was asking me how much time out of the day do I weld, and I remember at the time, like I was like, well, like all day, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized like I got a welder with like a arc counter that counts,
Oh, no
or
kidding.
a helmet, that's tells you how long like of arc time you've actually had the welder on. And it's like, oh, it hasn't been that long at all.
That's a
Oh,
common
3
thing,
hours.
like even in like welding businesses, right?
Yeah.
Like you're looking to be more efficient and you're like, I've been welding all day. And
Yeah.
as you described, it's kind of like, oh,
2.5 hours of arc time in there. What's
not,
this?
not quite the case.
Right. Well, and actually, I think it was a test machine. I was debuting for a company to kind of helping them with the R&D, and that's where it really came into play because it shows you how many hours you had to put so many hours on this machine, and it would show you.
Oh yeah.
Like every day, I'd turn it on, and it still says 1. What's going on? Like I've been welding like all day, every day, and but it's like it's one tack at a time, or just like a short little weld, and then I'm walking over and grabbing a piece, and I'm cutting a piece, and I'm shaping a piece, and like so much of the time is like not actually with the hood down that it's not really that you're welding that much. You're doing so much other stuff.
You're doing prep, you're doing secondary, and
Yeah.
Right. So do you begin these? How do you begin a project? Is it in your head? Do you try to flesh it out on paper, or do you kind of just like work with it as you go from the ground up?
I used to do some sketches like kind of early on, specifically before it was a full-time thing. Like it'd be kind of one of those nights where it's burned out and I kind of felt creative, but not enough to like go out into the shop.
Right.
So I'd sit down with like paper and pencil but it's hard to draw. Like, it's like, you don't really know if you're going to use a piece of a car or a saw blade or something on an animal when you're looking at a piece of paper, like even what you have to work with. So I'd kind of draw like a bird out of scrap metal, but then when I would make it, it would never look like the picture actually looked. So now it's more or less been, sometimes I'll have an idea and it's just like, I've got an idea and I know I want to do it. Other times I'm working on a commission. I sell a lot of work through a gallery down in Arizona. So I've been focusing on a lot of Southwestern themed wildlife. And wildlife is my main subject matter.
Sure.
But usually it'll be, you pick something and then you're going to look for materials that either have the color, maybe the shape, texture is a big one. And I'll just kind of gather up materials and go from there. It's like a trial and error thing.
Sure. Do you have like a name around town now? It's like, oh, you got scrap metal unload, call David or something. Do people just kind of bring it by?
They do on occasion. Yeah. I mean, I'll walk out to my shop one day and there's like a pile of car parts or things, like sitting in front of my door and someone just stopped in overnight or during the day and I didn't see them and they just dropped it off there. And
that's cool.
So sometimes I don't know where it came from. But
is there a method to your organization? Because we've talked to, there's a scrap metal artist named Steve Cost in the Chicago area. I think I saw you did Scrap Fest, so you probably know him through there. He's just kind of like, I just throw it in my garage and I kind of know in my mind where everything is. Is that how you operate too?
I can't do that.
Well, another guy that I interviewed recently, Travis Pond out in Oregon. I mean, he's meticulous. I mean, every bin is like, is that more like you?
I started buying like these great big bins and like one bin is just door hinges and it's not just door hinges, it's door hinges that are rectangle. And the other bin is door hinges that are like the triangular shaped ones. And like, it's pretty organized to a point. The outdoor area isn't yet, but I'm hoping to get it to the point where like, if I know I need a leaf spring, like there's the leaf spring pile and they're all taken apart and they're ready to be used. But I would waste so much time and like to have my kids help me too. That's the other thing. Like if my kids are going to help me organize things, like if they put it somewhere, I don't know where they put it unless they put it in the bin with the proper thing, So everything is really, I think, pretty well organized.
Cool.
The problem is like I collect faster than I use, which
sure.
It's not a bad problem, but the problem is like I run out of places to put it. So then it like piles up and then you have to take like a couple of days and like find places to put it all.
Yeah.
So
is it harder to be creative when you kind of have an open docket as opposed to like, I need these 2 hours of the evening or when I need to get, commit to it?
You work better with a deadline?
I do. I'm more productive with a deadline. I think that's probably safe to say with anybody, but when I have deadlines to meet, I can get a lot more done. When you get through a bunch of deadlines and your schedule's kind of open for a while, I find myself, it's easier to waste time.
Yeah.
And
sure.
That's tough. my wife is a teacher, so in the summer she's home. But like I used to think, I'm not going to get anything done in the summer because, my wife is home and the kids are home and I'm going to be distracted. I find I'm far more easily distracted when there's like no one there to hold you accountable.
Right. Right.
So
yes,
right?
It's kind of a game you got to play. I have to make sure that I'm holding myself accountable for what I'm doing all day.
So are commissions a regular part of your business?
They are. I would say it's probably kind of like a third. So about a third of my work is commissions. Probably about a third of it goes through galleries. And then a third of it is just via like direct sales, like through my website.
Wow.
Cool.
Have you ever turned down a commission?
Yeah. And
what was the reasoning for that?
There was one that just seemed too large scale, and I just didn't feel I was ready. And I talked to another artist that I thought it was like in their line of work, and said, "Well, I'm gonna recommend them to you, and you take it from there." I don't know if whatever came of it. I don't do as many small commissions anymore. Like my smaller work is the stuff that I just really want to do, and I'll put it for sale, and like it's available when it's available. Mostly commissions are going to be larger projects for me now. So if someone wants a small piece, maybe I'll try to fit it into my schedule, but it's going to be for sale. When it's available, you can purchase it if you get the chance.
Yeah.
And I guess I had one piece that was just a conflict of interest in the material that they wanted me to use in it, and I turned it down.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Mostly private, or are there some public commissions where people can kind of see your work pretty easily?
Most of them are private. I think I kind of fell into this like business side of it backwards. Like I think a lot of artists kind of need to have gotten like where they get the public exposure first, and then they start going to like shows and exhibitions and get their name out there, and then kind of start selling to the public. At least that's what I've witnessed when I talk to other artists. And like, I kind of did it all backwards. Like social media kicked off really big, and I started getting enough sales to run the business off that. And then I started kind of doing some of the public things after that, and shows like I still really haven't done many shows. Like I've done like 2.
Oh, wow.
So as far as like actually like art sale type shows, I did a great big piece for, just a really interesting place. It was down in Florida. It's called the Anastasia Mosquito Control District, and it's where is it near now?
Everglades.
No, it's actually it's up in the northern part of the state, like near Jacksonville.
Okay.
Yeah.
But like it's this big facility, and their job is to figure out how to control areas that have too many mosquitoes, how to like engineer different types of mosquito. There's a lot of science involved, but they had me build this like 10-foot tall mosquito for their museum, and it's sitting out in front of it.
Nice.
And we hauled that down to Florida on a
I'm a huge
trailer.
fan of tax dollars being used on stuff like that. That's awesome.
I think we found it here.
Yeah, I mean it's
St. Augustine.
Yeah, there you go.
St. Augustine.
Yeah.
Oldest city in the country.
Yeah, there's the mosquito. And so like that thing was on a trailer, and I think we probably almost caused like a number of car accidents.
Yes,
because people would slow down and like
What is that?
like taking videos and
Sure. That's hilarious.
So that was a public piece, and then I've got one at one of the Wisconsin DNR centers in northern Wisconsin, and then there's a piece out at the Shenandoah Valley Museum.
Oh, in Virginia.
Yeah, out
Well, that's
there
kinda
too.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
The mosquito is kind of the most random public art commission you've ever
Yeah,
had.
it really was. When I got, because I make a lot of insects. Insects are really fun. I guess that's another top subject. That insects, there's like no rules. There's so many like legs and feelers and things like that. You can kind of make an insect however you want, and it's still going to look like like a mosquito. But like if you get a bird wrong, like it kind of looks wrong. But man, there's like no rules when you're making a spider or a
8 legs.
grass. I guess you got it. Yeah, right. But it can still pretty much look like a spider. And I had done a lot of these little mosquitoes, and I think they were like, scrolling Etsy and they found me from like one of these little mosquitoes I made, and that's how the whole thing started.
That's funny. How big was that thing?
It was like 10 feet tall.
How long did it take you?
That was a big project. That was probably my most time-consuming project. I mean, I worked on it over the course, of a couple months. And, I had to kind of like figure out how to engineer it too. One of their requirements was that it had to withstand like a certain mile per hour hurricane force wind. And I'm like,
wow,
I'm just going to guess that it's going to be okay because I don't really know how to judge that,
We're going to make it really strong.
Yeah. One day you're going to see a 10-foot tall mosquito flying through the air.
Yeah. But, I had to redo the legs. I got the legs all done, and the legs on a mosquito, they're really spindly. And I tried to make them true to scale, and I got it done, and it just seemed like a little wobbly. So I had to rebuild all the legs. And back when I was into like wanting to build off-road Jeeps, I had a tubing bender for making roll cages and all that. And I finally got to use that on artwork. So I bent up all the legs using my, tubing bender, and
nice.
It was much stiffer after we got some solid tubing underneath it.
So are you involved in kind of the installation as well? Or usually is that left up to someone else?
When I can be, I like to be. So, I mean, I've delivered a number of pieces. I just recently delivered a dinosaur out to Colorado and, got to help get it positioned into the, the client's backyard.
Was it that Velociraptor?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we got to do, we got to get that put into place. And with the mosquito, they had a forklift and a crew there ready when we arrived. And so, we got that into place, and that was a lot of fun. A lot of my stuff gets shipped without me there. It gets put in a big crate. It shows up, and it's kind of out of my hands. I'd like to be on hands, but when it's shipped all over the country, it's not necessarily feasible for me to be there for installation.
So how many pieces do you produce in a year?
I keep track of a lot of things, but it's not a number I remember. I mean, I try to, if I'm working on something big, I might just get one thing done in a month. But if I'm working on small things, I might do like 4 things in a week.
Okay.
So, it's a good amount of pieces kind of get, moved through over the course of a year.
Yeah. Where do you think you'd like to take it from here? I mean, you seem like a very goal-oriented person and somebody who gets a great deal of satisfaction out of doing something well. I mean, what do you think you want to do, say, in a year or two that you haven't done before?
I used to think that I wanted to do big monumental pieces. And, as you get older, like, working with bigger, heavier material doesn't sound as interesting anymore. I'd still like to try and do some great big stuff someday, but I really get the most satisfaction out of doing like really intricate, small, detailed indoor pieces. I think that's what I get the most satisfaction out of building.
Yeah. Cool.
I don't know that I'll be a metal artist for the rest of my artist career. Like I've gotten interested in bronze, to maybe consider trying to incorporate bronze someday. Ultimately, I think like maybe when I reach retirement age, I'd probably rather paint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Than work with metal all day. It's a dirty, messy job.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to do something that maybe I could stay a little cleaner on a daily basis and not have I work pretty safe. I have a fume extractor. I wear a respirator, but there's hazards with the shop environment.
Yeah.
I'd maybe like to get to a point where I can maybe teach a little bit more on like the business end of being an artist, because I feel like I've got a pretty good grasp on some of the aspects of that. And I'm still learning a lot, but I think there's a lot of artists that, they're really good at making art and they want to make art, but they just haven't wrapped their mind around like the business side of
marketing.
it.
I mean, which brings me to this question. You've got a lot of Instagram followers. Was it 270?
So right around 270,000.
Yeah. To what do you attribute that?
So that's something I need to get better at figuring out. There have been a couple times when we delivered that mosquito.
Sure.
I had some kind of like pre-scheduled reels that were going to run when I was on vacation, because like you kind of need to stay steady or like followers drop off. So I had this reel with a bunch of bees that I made. And I remember I woke up in the morning and I like checked my phone, and like when Instagram has over 100 likes or follows, or it just says 100. And like every time I checked, it said 100. And like over the course of the day, I gained like 30,000 followers off this reel of these bees. And I'm like, what? Like, what's going on? I couldn't answer comments fast enough. I couldn't answer messages fast enough. And I've had that happen a couple other times with specific videos that hit really hard. And I don't know what caused them to hit.
Well, that's the mystery of viral videos, right?
Yeah.
You're never quite sure what sets it off.
Yeah. And so there was those certain times where like follower count could grow. Like I had this frog video that like over Christmas one year, I think I gained like 50,000 followers over Christmas weekend. And I still don't know why. I don't know why. I've tried to make videos kind of similar to it, thinking it would happen again, and it doesn't,
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's an aspect that I've never hired anyone to do the social media for me.
Wow.
I've tried to kind of muddle my way through it.
It sounds like you're muddling okay.
Wow. That would be probably something I'd like to consider so I could learn a little bit more, because someone that does that for a living can probably look at it and say, hey, here's why this works and here's why this doesn't.
Sure. I'm sure.
And I'd like to learn more about that.
We're trying to figure it out too.
But it's like the business side too of things. Like when I was in auto repair, managing the 3 shops, it was my job to make sure like our sale goals were, you wanted to meet them monthly. And if you didn't, you wanted to know why. I think a lot of artists, if they do good, they kind of know why. If they don't do good, I think a lot of times they don't know why. And so for me, like every day I track the amount of hours I work and what I was doing, whether it was, am I producing sculpture, whether that means welding or picking through materials? Am I working on social media? Am I delivering a sculpture? Am I shipping? I've kind of got a bunch of categories. And then at the end of the month, if sales were a little lower, I can look back at the numbers and I can kind of see like, well, I didn't put in as much time in the shop last month, or I put in a lot of time, but it's a piece that's not finished yet, so it couldn't get sold yet.
Right. There's no ROI yet.
Right. And it just allows me to kind of keep, I was told once by one of our business consultants in the auto industry, and the shop I was involved with used a lot of them, and like I learned a lot from that. But you can't improve upon anything that isn't measured. That's what they said. If you measure something, you can improve upon it. So I'm always just trying to use those measurements as a way to kind of help figure out what's working and what's not.
Well, kind of make the grind, right? Make it work for you.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with galleries?
Yeah. I had, so we live Green Bay area, just outside of Green Bay, small town of Freedom. And there's a tourist area called Door County. So it's kind of, you go up into Door County and you feel like you're on the East Coast on the ocean. Like it's blue water, Lake Superior, all these little kind of coastal towns with marinas and bed and breakfasts, a lot of nice art galleries up there. And I had gone up on a fishing trip and I said, hey, I want to check out some art galleries because I want to get in one someday. And I went and visited a couple of them. And the one I'm in now was the one I really wanted to apply to, but I was like, I don't think I'm ready to apply there yet. But another one, they were really nice. They said, hey, why don't you join us? And I worked for them for a couple of years. Not worked for them, but delivered art to them. And then at the time I went full time, I was like, I think I'm going to try that other gallery now because they seem to move a little bit more work, and that's going to be important if I'm doing this full time. And so I went and applied there, and they accepted me, and I've been there. I think this is my 4th or 5th season with them. And it's a little different because it's seasonal. Door County kind of shuts down in the winter. But that was the gallery thing. And then the one I'm showing at down in Prescott, Arizona, the owner of that gallery had contacted me back in like late 2019, early 2020. And I was still working full time in the auto repair. And he wanted me to show there. And I was just like, I don't know, I'm not really ready for that. Like, that's a long ways away.
Yeah.
And then the whole kind of COVID thing happened, and he contacted me. He's like, hey, why don't we just kind of, I don't know what's going to happen in the gallery scene, what kind of business we're going to have coming in. So we didn't really talk for a few years. And then it was like, I think it was 23 or 24. He got back in touch. He's like, hey, I'd really like to get your work down here. I'd like to set up a show that focuses on highlighting your work. And if it goes good, like, why don't you start showing here? So that was just a year and a half ago, September.
Wow.
And then I did another show in the spring. I did another one last September, and then we just got back from there like 2 weeks ago.
No kidding.
And so they've been moving a lot of the work for me down there.
Where's your what galleries were you referring to in Door County?
Door County is in Fish Creek. It's called Edgewood Orchard.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it was in Fish Creek. I know that's become a big art town.
Yeah,
my wife and I are heading up there in a few days. Yep. Yeah, so when you're showing at galleries, does the mix of, I should say, attractive or popular stuff change from, or is it pretty steady with what you find in the other thirds of your business?
Say that again. So does the work I show different?
Is the mix of popular stuff different from not, say online or other things?
It's so regional. So I mean, you go up to Door County and like, let's say if you were a painter, you're probably going to see a lot of paintings of like
water
and boats and like shorelines at Cave Point and things like that.
Sure.
You go down to Arizona, you're going to see like a completely different thing, and
desertscapes.
And so like in Door County, a lot of the wildlife stuff is things you're going to see in our part of the state. They get a lot of customers from Chicago, real popular tourist destination for that. But
absolutely,
I'm probably not going to put like a javelina like I just made for Arizona.
Oh, right.
In
of course.
Door County.
Right.
And
then people have never seen one.
The neat thing about the one down in Arizona, it's called Ian Russell Gallery. It's in downtown Prescott. It's in a really good spot right across from the courthouse. They call it Whiskey Row, and there's probably like 10 different galleries there.
Oh.
It's so different than any gallery I've ever been in. So at first it kind of scared me away. I was like, I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know if that's refined enough for me. There's just a lot of wild and crazy colors and skulls and things that I'm like aren't really my style, but people love it because it's so different. Some galleries you go in one and the next and they all kind of blend together. And like you go in this place and it's like, you can't mistake it for another gallery anywhere.
Nice.
And so I really appreciate that.
Sure. Kind of an honor in a way to be chosen for something like that. This is so iconoclastic. And that's good. That's cool. And one last question about the gallery scene. Are there other galleries that in other parts of the country where you'd like to get into?
There is. I've really kind of fallen in love with like the Western landscape. I think in the beginning you said I was going to live in Green Bay, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe not. But there's a lot of really nice galleries in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and we've toured those. And that was I don't want to get into a gallery if I can't provide them with enough work. And so I don't want to open the door to a third gallery and then not be able to, offer them what they want. So I'm kind of waiting until I get to a point where I feel it's right that I can produce the amount of work and maybe apply. There's a couple I have in mind out there in Jackson Hole. It'd be fun to be at a gallery that was maybe along the coast somewhere, because I really like making aquatic things, but you're not going to sell a shark or a squid in Arizona or Jackson Hole or Wisconsin. So I don't really make as much of that stuff. But if I was in like Miami, maybe, that would be kind of fun.
Anything you want to add, Garrett?
Yeah, so I was curious. I was listening to another podcast you're on, and you were talking about how you started looking at the anatomy and like the muscular structure of an animal, or like especially birds, before you started creating the bird, instead of just like the face value of what a bird looks like. You understand the anatomy of it. Did that change the way your sculptures have turned out?
It really did. So I kind of it wasn't really my idea to look at this muscular structure thing. I've always noticed the muscle structure on an animal, but of course, when you have a photograph of a deer with fur or a wolf with fur, you don't see that. And it was an artist I met when I was over in Qatar, and we were doing live builds like on the square in front of people with scrap metal that we collected while we were there. And I was watching him build, and I was like, wow, how, and I looked at these photos, and he had like these, it was like a photo of the animal without the fur. It was just like the muscle structure.
Oh, wow.
I was like, that's really cool, because you can see where all these muscle groups go and come together. I had used like skeleton photos before. So, when I'm kind of making the framework of the leg, I don't really make like an inner structure, but I kind of know the leg goes here and then it goes here. And then where does it go in the body? Well, it kind of, it goes back here to help me get the dimensions of the leg right. Same with birds, because like birds, you just see the little bottom of their legs sticking out of the fluff. And I always had a tough time, like I'd get them too far forward, or I'd get them too far back, and then the bird would look like it was going to tip over or something.
Yeah.
And so I start with birds, like I make this little inner skeleton of like little sticks of the legs connecting to like the vertebrae to the head. And you don't see any of it, but it helps me get the head the right distance from the legs and get the tail attached in the right place.
It's so funny. So like what makes me laugh is if you've ever seen a photo of a wet owl.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like.
You know what I mean? Just like, what is that? Like, it's totally different. It almost looks like a totally different animal.
Yeah.
But then taking your approach, you're going to get that right proportion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That brings to mind an art exhibit I saw years ago, the bodies exhibit. Did you ever see anything like that?
At the
Museum of Science and Industry.
Yeah,
right?
it toured around the country.
Yeah.
And so I actually saw it in the Metroplex, Dallas, Fort Worth Metroplex.
Okay.
That you see every single sinew and every single muscle.
I think it's in Chicago now.
Is it in Chicago now?
Like over by there's that museum by the Shed Aquarium.
Sure.
Yeah.
We went down there a
Field
year
Museum,
or two ago and saw it. It was
Maybe it was the Field Museum.
Yeah, but fascinating, right? Because you see the inner workings of the human body.
Yeah.
And you think how everything connects together and
and it's like a real too, you know.
Yeah, for real. These people did volunteer for this, just so you know. But yeah, but what an interesting concept. You go from the inside out, right?
Right.
You say, okay, this is the way it works on the inside. So probably much easier then to add other layers like you were talking about before,
right,
and get it right.
Well, and another component of it, and I don't really talk about it too much in social media because it's sometimes controversial for different viewers, but like I'm involved in a lot of hunting, fishing, things like that.
Sure.
And like
you're in Wisconsin,
my family sees it as, not only a pastime, but it's a way to have sustainable food source.
Yeah.
And so we process all of our own game that we harvest ourselves. Mm-hmm. My son raises pheasants.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
So we're cleaning birds, cleaning fish, cleaning deer. Mm-hmm. And so, you get first, hands-on experience as to what all that looks like, how things connect, how things look. And, for us, it's a good, clean way of living. And it also, I don't do it because of my artwork, but it's just one more thing that I think contributes maybe to the accuracy of the work I do.
Sure.
Has that helped like establish like kind of your own style and approach to like doing scrap metal, like opposed to like something that John Lopez is doing?
I do focus probably more on like game animals.
Yeah.
That's more of my interest. I don't really know aside from that. I think it's more maybe influenced the subject matter than maybe the way that I approach the work.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Is there a game animal you haven't done yet that you'd maybe like to tackle?
Oh, there's a bunch of them.
Like a bear?
I have not done a bear.
Oh.
We're doing a show in Loveland, Colorado in August, and I'm going to show up with one big sculpture this year. I did a moose last year. That was really big.
Moose pretty.
And I'd like to do either like a mule deer or a bear. I'm a little stuck on the bear because bears are just so big and fluffy.
Correct.
And it's going to be hard to I like to see that movement and that muscle structure, and you don't have that.
Yeah.
Like they're just big,
enormous.
So I don't know if I'll do a bear quite yet.
Interesting though.
But yeah, something like that. I'd love to try some like African animals.
Oh, wow.
But I don't really know if there's a market for an African animal sculpture in Wisconsin or the U.S. And so I'm a little bit.
You never know.
Right.
I'm just
if I win that lottery, I'm getting a giraffe, but
conflicted.
And the house to put it in.
I'd love to have a giraffe just at the house overlooking the garage.
Yeah.
Just random.
Okay, so I got a question about the Clint Eastwood sculpture. That's so outside of everything else that you do. What was the inspiration?
So I did a show at Ian Russell Gallery last September, and there's another metal artist there that I've gotten to be pretty good friends with. And he does a lot of busts with like skeleton heads, but he uses like automotive parts and motorcycle parts and a lot of stuff. And we were doing this show together, and we wanted a theme. And so we decided we were going to kind of cater this show as like a duel. Like it was him against me, but not really. And so I said, let's each I think we kind of decided together we were going to do like a gunfighter. So he did his kind of wild, crazy take on a gunfighter. And I was like, I'm going to do Clint Eastwood from The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Yes.
But we didn't want to do the whole thing. I'm like, let's just do, like the waist up. And I struggled with that one. Like I almost gave up a bunch of times, but I'm like, if I hadn't committed to the show, I would not have finished it.
The hat looks great, by the way.
What was the hang up? Was it just the facial structure?
It was just the clothing was really hard.
Wow.
I don't know why the clothing was so hard, but it was really hard.
You've got a lot of poncho there to work with.
But it's so distinctive in terms of like his look, so you have to get that right. So I can see where it'd be a little
you know who it is right away.
But
challenging.
It's right there.
Well, I appreciate that, but like a face, like, can you tell the difference between two deer? but I can tell the difference between the two. You guys, no problem. Like, so like with a deer, it just has to look like a deer, right?
Right.
But I'm like, how do I make a person look like not just a person, but like that person?
Yeah, with scrap metal.
That was really a tricky thing because I try not to grind, like I try not to distort the piece I started with too much. So it was like, how do I find these pieces that I'm not going to grind them to the point that they don't look like what they started out as?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know what you did exactly. I mean, the hair looks great. I mean, I think the nose is very true to life.
That's like his 5th nose.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, well, hey, you do what it takes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I watched it a couple times while I was making that.
Eli Wallach. And, yeah. Yeah, and he's such an iconic character. That Blondie character is just one of his classics, right?
Right. I mean, you picture, like, anyone that knows Clint Eastwood, I think, like, you picture him wearing that poncho like that's Clint Eastwood, you know?
Yes.
That's fine. So what type of advice would you have for somebody who's maybe thinking like, hey, I'd like to try my shot at being maybe a metal artist?
I think you got to start with just being yourself and like doing work that's true to yourself. You know, I'm sure I've gathered, how do you not gather inspiration from other artists? I don't care if you're a painter or a singer. Like, you hear a song style you like and you kind of start to sing that way. You see a style of art you like, you kind of start to make that way, but not getting so far off that you kind of lose who you are, you know, because you still want what you do to be unique to you. The other thing is, if you're going to be a scrap metal artist, you got to use materials that are easy for you to get. Like, it might be really easy for me to get tractor stuff, but down in Arizona, they don't have a lot of agriculture like we do here. So you're not going to use agricultural parts. So like finding material that's easy to get and then making your style of artwork work with that style of material. Because if you're searching for parts all the time, it's going to slow you down. It's going to frustrate you. It's probably going to cost you more money than it should. So.
Thanks for joining us today, David. If people wanted to learn more about you, where can they find you out there?
So it's, of course, no one can say my last name, let alone spell it. But it's davidgroenjesart.com, or follow me on Facebook or Instagram at David Groenjes Art.
Thanks for joining us today. It was really exciting.
You
do really great work.
I appreciate that.
It just runs the gamut, too. It's kind of cool. If you have any comments, criticisms, or complaints, send them to podcast@fmamfg.org. And be sure and let us know what you're thinking. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you very much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you again in the future.
So long.
Thanks.
Man, you really dragged that one out.
The Fabricator Podcast is a production of the Fabricators and Manufacturers Association. The show is hosted by Dan Davis and Lincoln Bruner. The podcast is produced by Gareth Slager, recorded by Griffin Hammond, and edited by Dana Weicker. Additional support provided by Andy Flando, Elizabeth Gavin, Sarah Spring, Amy Hudson, Mike Owens, Billy Kolpa, and Pat Simon. If you like this podcast, check out the FMA Podcast Network. Thank you for listening.
Groenjes.